Have you ever had one of those moments of just intense focus?
Mm.
Maybe you were working on something really difficult or just walking alone, and you suddenly feel this quiet, deep happiness.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with getting a reward or anything external.
Exactly. It's not excitement. It's just self-contained.
Well, that feeling, that sort of internal non-sensual satisfaction is precisely the territory we are mapping today.
Oh,
We are doing a deep dive into some really, really old sources on human psychology.
yeah.
Specifically, the Buddhist suttas and nikayas.
And these texts, they're not just philosophical, are they?
Not at all. They're more like a user manual. A guide for, well, for engineering these systematic internal states of happiness, of bliss even.
A bliss designed to be more reliable than anything the world can offer.
That's the claim. More reliable and ultimately more powerful.
So that's our mission for this deep dive then.
Yeah.
Can sustained, quiet attention on something as simple as your own breathing, can that actually lead to profound pleasure?
And if so, how does that work? What's the mechanism?
We're going to track the progressive stages of this internal joy, this happiness that's achieved just through mental focus.
And we'll need to contrast it with, ordinary worldly pleasure.
Right, to see why this spiritual contentment is, according to these ancient experts, the direct path to ending suffering.
And just to frame this, we're really talking about two key concepts you'll hear a lot. First is samadhi,
Which is deep concentration.
or immersion.
Exactly. And the second is jhana. The jhanas are the distinct stages of absorption, these profound states of happiness that come from that concentration.
So this is a deep dive into the methodology of internal joy.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, let's start at the beginning, the foundation. Before you get to any kind of bliss, you have to build a mechanism of attention.
Right.
And the core practice for that is ānāpānasati, mindfulness of breathing.
Yes. And the texts are incredibly clear about the setup, the preconditions.
It's not just sit anywhere and close your eyes. No. First, the environment. The practitioner, or the mendicant, as they're often called, has to find a secluded place.
So the wilderness, a quiet tree, an empty room.
Somewhere free of distraction. Then, the posture. They sit down cross-legged, body straight. And this is critical. They establish mindfulness right there, in that present moment.
So the container is set, the right place, the right posture. But the real work is the attention on the breath, isn't it? It's not just a casual awareness.
Not at all. It's a very precise monitoring system.
How so?
The instruction is to know when you're breathing in deeply or when the breath is heavy, and to know when it's shallow or light.
So you're not trying to change it.
You're not trying to control it at all. You're just observing it precisely, without judgment.
What I find fascinating is that the breath isn't just treated as a thought or some mental event. The sources say it's a certain aspect of the body.
Yes, that physical anchor is so important because it grounds the mind. In this whole system, the mind and body are intrinsically linked. You calm the breath, you calm the body. Simple as that.
But it goes deeper.
Oh, much deeper. The meditator is told to keep going until they're experiencing the whole body with the breath. And then they start to actively engage in stilling physical processes.
Stilling physical processes. That sounds very technical. What does that actually feel like? Is it just breathing less?
It's more than just lung activity. Think about all the internal noise we all carry around.
The restlessness.
The restlessness, the subtle tremors, the involuntary twitches, that constant agitated internal chatter.
Oh, okay.
When the mind focuses relentlessly on the breath, it systematically calms all of that down. Stilling those processes is the key step. It's where the mind finally cuts off that feedback loop of sensory distraction and physical agitation.
So the goal of this first stage is basically to turn the volume on the world and on our own bodies down to zero.
And that's why the sources say this technique is very fruitful and beneficial. You're building the stability, the energy you need for what comes next.
Which is the generation of bliss itself.
Indeed. Once that mind is stable and the body is calm, that concentration, that samadhi, it deepens, the focus systematically shuts down the noisy sensory world.
And when the external input stops.
You get an energy surge, and that's what leads to these stages of profound internal bliss, the jhanas.
Okay, so this is where the real method for generating happiness kicks in. And it's not one single feeling, it's a progression.
A clear progression.
Let's start with the first absorption, first jhana. What's the quality of this first breakthrough?
The first absorption is defined by rapture and bliss born of seclusion.
Born of seclusion.
Yes, this is that first taste of happiness that comes purely from stepping away from, unskillful thoughts and sensual desire. The mind is just elated to have found a source of joy that's untainted.
But it's not effortless yet.
No, it still requires conscious effort. The texts say you still have to intentionally place the mind on the object and keep it connected. You're actively holding it in place.
So it's powerful, but you're still white-knuckling the focus a little bit. Then, as the concentration deepens, we get to the second absorption. What changes here?
The effort. The effort falls away completely.
Okay.
This is a crucial transition. In the second absorption, you don't need that initial placing and connecting anymore because the internal clarity is now self-sustaining. The state is characterized by a finer rapture and bliss born of immersion.
So the joy now comes from the inner stability itself,
Yeah.
not the struggle to maintain focus.
Exact.
That's a profound shift from effortful happiness to effortless, self-generated happiness. And the sources have a really great analogy for this state.
They do. It's a very memorable one. They say the meditator drenches, steeps, fills, and spreads their body with this rapture and bliss, and they compare it to a deep lake.
The lake with no water coming in from the outside.
No river, no rain. It's fed constantly and entirely by a subterranean spring, an internal spring.
A self-contained spring. That implies the joy is completely independent of everything that normally drives us. Success, approval, buying things.
It requires no external input, and
Right.
that's the key. That's what weakens the mechanism of craving.
Because craving always needs an external object.
By definition. So if your deepest satisfaction is purely internal and self-sustaining, the mind's habitual pull toward fleeting external things it loses its power.
That makes perfect sense. But the journey doesn't stop with that intense rapture. The path gets even more subtle. We move to the third absorption.
We do.
And I have to ask, this seems contradictory. The third absorption is characterized by equanimity, mindful and aware, personally experiencing the bliss. But isn't equanimity the absence of strong feeling? How can you have bliss and equanimity at the same time?
That's an excellent question. It gets right to the heart of the difference between spiritual happiness and, say, sensual pleasure. The intense excitement of the second absorption, that rapture, it's still a bit volatile. It's powerful, but it uses energy.
Right.
When you enter the third absorption, that raw, intense rapture fades. It's replaced by a quieter, deeper, more stable form of happiness.
So it's not the absence of feeling.
It's the absence of volatility. The bliss is still there, but you experience it with perfect neutrality. It's like the difference between drinking a fizzy, sugary soda and drinking pure, still spring water.
Both are satisfying, but one is just profoundly more stable,
Precisely. And that stability deepens even further with the fourth absorption.
which seems to transcend even happiness itself.
It does. It's the complete ending of both pleasure and pain. The meditator reaches a state without pleasure or pain, with pure equanimity and mindfulness. All the subtle physical processes are stilled. You've successfully transcended the entire realm of feeling.
And that supreme stability, that's the launch pad for ultimate insight.
That's the necessary basis for it, yes.
So we've covered the how, the internal progression, but we need to zoom out to the why.
Yes. Why bother with all this?
And the answer seems to be the fundamental unreliability of worldly satisfaction,
Exactly. The sources call this the pleasure of the flesh.
which is everything we normally chase. The sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches that we find likable, desirable, agreeable.
It's our entire daily search for satisfaction, really. But according to these sources, there's a fatal flaw.
Yeah, that is.
The very nature of those feelings, whether they're pleasant, painful, or neutral, they are all inherently impermanent, suffering, and perishable.
They depend on an external object. The moment the object is gone.
The pleasure vanishes, and it often leaves behind a craving, a painful gap. That cycle of seeking and loss is the root of worldly suffering.
Which is why the meditative bliss is so important. It's independent.
It's independent, it's achievable because the mind is developed in seclusion, rid of what the texts call covetousness and displeasure.
Which for us today might mean being free from wanting things and being averse to things.
It's a good translation. And this purity is maintained by guarding the sense doors, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind.
You stop the external input from fueling internal distraction.
And when you do that, you experience an unsullied bliss inside yourself. A happiness that can't be taken away by changing circumstances because it has no external hook.
It's really the ultimate countermeasure to sensory overload, isn't it? Our whole economy is built on constantly stimulating those sense doors, so we're never content.
And this ancient technology is a total withdrawal from that addiction. There's a fantastic anecdote that shows just how powerful this spiritual joy is.
Oh.
It's about Venerable Puttiya. He dedicated himself to this practice, and while meditating in deep seclusion, other practitioners would often hear him exclaim just, "Oh, what bliss! Oh, what bliss!"
Okay, and the interesting part is their reaction.
Exactly. They heard him, and they mistakenly assumed he was reminiscing about his old life.
What with his old life?
Before he renounced the world, Pāti had been a prince, a king even.
Wow.
They thought he was recalling the pleasures of royalty because they just couldn't imagine a higher, more intense joy than having absolute worldly power.
So the highest pleasure they could conceive of, ruling a kingdom, having every possible indulgence.
They thought that was what he was talking about. It shows the spiritual joy was so intense, so powerful, it was mistaken for the memory of being a king.
That really puts the power of this bliss into context. But as you said, the goal isn't just enjoyment. This stable bliss is the engine for liberation.
Precisely. Right? Immersion, samadhi, which covers all these states, isn't optional. It's the final factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. It's the capstone of the whole system.
But how does joy lead to freedom? It almost sounds like a distraction from the analytical work of insight.
It's the necessary precondition. The path, as the sources say, relies on seclusion, fading away, and cessation, and ripens as letting go.
You can't let go if your mind is still agitated and restless.
You can't. The jhanas provide an unprecedented level of mental stability and clarity. And only when the mind is that stable, that free from distraction, can it gain the penetrating insight needed to see reality as it truly is.
Stability allows for non-reactive observation.
That's it. The concentrated mind is finally stable enough to observe the 5 grasping aggregates form, feeling, perception, choices, consciousness, without reacting.
And it sees them for what they are.
It sees them as suffering, as impermanent, and as not self. You realize that everything you cling to is fundamentally unreliable.
And when you see that clearly, the desire to cling just fades on its own.
It does. The texts say the mind is well freed when it lets go of greed for feeling. The origin of all suffering comes back to craving. Craving for pleasure, craving for existence, even craving for non-existence.
So by generating this pure internal happiness, you remove the need to crave the external world.
You have demonstrated, through your own experience, that ultimate satisfaction is achievable without relying on anything outside your own disciplined mind. The cessation of craving is freedom.
So this deep dive has really laid out an ancient, incredibly sophisticated system. It's a precise, practical path where focused attention, starting with the breath, systematically calms your whole internal world.
And in doing so, generates a self-sourced joy that's more profound than any external stimulant.
Culminating in the end of suffering. It's self-improvement technology at its most fundamental level.
And it all relies on the rational application of mind and, importantly, on ethical conduct. So if we accept the premise that the goal is ending suffering through this disciplined internal bliss, it leaves us with a pretty provocative question.
Which is?
If this internal peace is the truest gold, what does this systematic, repeatable method suggest about the ultimate value of any happiness we chase that remains totally reliant on fleeting sensory contact, on external objects?
If the path to freedom lies within.
Are we spending our lives perpetually searching for fool's gold on the outside?